Oh no, they dragged Don Cherry into this thing, didn't they? I'm Danielle Metz.
I'm Robert Vaughn.
And this is the Danielle Metz Show. Quote, I know what I said and I meant it. Everybody in Canada should wear a poppy to honor our fallen soldiers. I would have liked to continue doing Coach's Corner. The problem is that if I have to watch everything I say, it isn't Coach's Corner. Don Cherry told the Toronto Star in the wake of his being fired from his position that he held for almost 40 years. If you're Canadian, you've likely already heard what he said, but for the rest of the world, the quote that angered the members of the cancel culture was, you people, you come here, whatever it is, you love our way of life, you love our milk and honey. At least you could pay a couple bucks for a poppy. Of course, this was immediately translated into racist, bigoted, xenophobic, etc., etc., etc. And of course, Ron MacLean, his co-host, who's nodding through Don's statement and gave him a thumbs up, threw him under the bus the next day to save his own story skin. You people, you come here, whatever it is. This is not the most controversial statement that the Don has ever made. My personal favorite was about the left-wing pinkos and cuckaloos in regards to global warming. But this one touched a nerve. Canadian culture is a sin, you see. And unfettered immigration is our collective repentance. We're not allowed to see that our identity as Canadians is being eroded from the inside and out. Leftists and their ilk must punish those who dare notice and draw attention to this fact, that Canadians' history and its very soul is being eradicated. So, Robert, what does it say about the current state of our civilization that even someone as prominent icon as the Don is not immune to cancel culture? Why are they picking on Cherry? See what I did there? I worked very hard on that. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm reminded of when Robert De Niro during the Tony Awards a couple of years ago said F Trump as soon as he walked out on stage, and everybody did the seal claps, and not just the seal claps, boy, they were fist pumping, they were laughing.
Yeah,
and
you
cheering.
stuck it to the man.
Yeah, and I look at the audience, I panned out over the audience on those big shots, right, and I said, how many people are standing up and applauding? And I would say about 95%. You could probably count on two hands those who stayed seated. And there was one woman who was going like this, not sure what it meant, out of disgust or like, I can't believe he said that or whatever, how brave of him, I don't know.
I can't believe he put his career on the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But you see, why? First of all, half the people in the United States voted for Trump. And in California, even in California, outside of the major urban centers, Trump won a lot of the counties. So I can't believe that everybody who was at the Tony Awards, or the 95% of them, supported what Robert De Niro said in his crude way. So why did they stand up? They stood up because they were afraid. They were afraid for their jobs. They were afraid for disapproval from their peers.
They didn't want to be the first man to stop clapping.
From Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag Archipelago, yes, when Stalin was being introduced, I think, by a mayor of some town, when Stalin got up, everybody stood up and applauded to the point where their hands are bleeding. Well, not figuratively, I guess.
Stalin had to actually tell them to stop, because no one wanted to be the first one to stop.
One of them sat down and then he was shipped off to the Gulag. And that's what would happen figuratively to anybody who did not stand up and give a standing raucous ovation to Robert De Niro's foul-mouthed political statement. And that's what's happened to the people at Rogers and Sportsnet who were employing Don Cherry. They know what the feeling is in society, or at least in the elite culture, regarding any allusions to immigrants, any disparaging allusions to immigrants, even by calling them you people who come here. That's enough.
Immigrant is not a race. This is a thing that they don't seem to understand.
Well, true,
They're assuming he doesn't mean Irishmen or British people. He's assuming that he's meaning people with darker pigment colors than us.
That's not even the half of it. This has had nothing to do with race. Some of the, of course, detractors out there would label Miller racist. I think the most prevalent word to call Don Cherry over that comment was xenophobe, fear of others. But of course, Don Cherry lives in Mississauga, has pretty much for all his life. He still has the same car. I saw him in a video from 30 years ago with his white...
Same car?
Yeah, same car. Continental, I think it was, and he still has same house, that kind of thing. So he's there. He's seen Mississauga grow up. It's mostly an immigrant town. Toronto is half immigrant. Mm-hmm. And so when he accurately said, according to Joe Warmington of the Toronto Sun, who was down in downtown Toronto filming people on Remembrance Day, seeing how many people were wearing a poppy, and he estimated about 10% were. So in a city of immigrants or half immigrants, when you get 10% who are not wearing poppies, it's quite an accurate statement to say that you people who come here to our milk and honey, that's okay, but you're not going to put out a buck or two for a poppy, which by the way is a volunteer donation. They don't even have to put out a buck or two. Then he's making a statement that's accurate. A lot of immigrants don't wear poppies. A lot of immigrants don't share our philosophy and our culture. That's obvious. However,
they didn't come here to be Canadian. They come here to be in Canada.
Yes. So Rogers and Sportsnet officials who fired Cherry were like the people in the Tony Awards standing up. They know where the current is going. They're going to go with that current. You cannot in Canada, or at least in officialdom, say anything disparaging of immigrants, or even seem to be disparaging of immigrants, to the point where you're saying that some of them don't wear poppies. You know, some immigrants don't wear poppies. Unbelievable that these people in power over Don Cherry have absolute no courage. Not only that, they have no vocabulary to explain why they wouldn't fire Don Cherry. Like you and I might, this isn't disparaging of immigrants, it's true, so therefore Don Cherry can stay. No, that's, I think, where we've headed is the Gulag Archipelago type of the first one to stop applauding, it gets sent to the Gulag.
Metaphorically speaking, thankfully, for the time being. But yeah, and the fact that there's... who is he supposed to apologize? I'm glad he didn't apologize. He said he may have used better words as opposed to saying you people. He could have said everyone who doesn't wear a poppy, so not singling out anything. But he never apologized. And I'm sure because he's 85 and has been doing this for a long time, has a bit of, they call it FU money, that he doesn't have to worry about it too much. His career, he's had a good one. He's beloved by Canadians everywhere. I'm not a sports person. I dabble in it from time to time just because it's a conversational topic to discuss with people who like hockey. I pay attention to football and that kind of stuff, just peripherally. But even I have, when I found out that he was fired, I was flabbergasted. I'm like, out of anyone in Canada you could pick who would be like the most Canadian, but that's the problem, isn't it? He's a Canadian and he's proud of it, and he talks like a Canadian. He's proud of being Canadian. He's proud of Canada. And I think that is what the real crux of the problem is that that's what they're trying to take out of our culture, is the Canadian aspect of it.
No, you hit the nail right on the head. He is like, it may not be a fair comparison just due to the enormity of it, but when the Saudi terrorists struck the World Trade Center, they did that for a particular reason. It wasn't just because it was an easy target. It was because it was a symbol of America, a skyscraper, trade, capitalism, commerce, that kind of thing. That's what they hate. That's what they attack. Don Cherry, same thing. A little crude, a little brash, plain spoken, common.
You mean like
man,
a real person?
A real person, yes. Is not politically correct. And they want to destroy that. So you hit the nail right on the head. He was an icon. You have to remove the icons if you want to remove the society or change the society. So,
and eradicate our culture and get rid of our history. And they're doing it bit by bit. And well, on the plus side, he's got his own podcast now called Grapevine. And like all Streisand effects kind of thing, most people wouldn't even have noticed that this had happened. This would have just been a blurb. If he'd said it and it was just let go, no one would have known what he said except for those who actually watch it. Now he's being reported by Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder. He's making the rounds. Like even Matt Christensen, who knows nothing about Canada, he even brought it up. It made him international news, which made him an international star. Which again, Streisand effect. Now everybody's paying attention to all the other stuff he said that was quote unquote offensive. So good job all around.
I love the pinkos and cuckaloos. That's a keeper.
The pinkos and cuckaloos.
But another person who might be in that same boat would be Posey Parker over in Great Britain, who, a self-avowed leftist, feminist, couldn't believe the way the left was going with transgenderism and the misuse of language, calling men trans women. And she, as a thinking human being, said, hang on a moment, you can't use the word women when you're talking about a man. Even if you put the word trans in front of it, it doesn't make him a woman. And of course she's pilloried for it. But it's almost the same thing. There's this pushing of the envelope to such a degree that at one point people start to say or question the narrative. Look at the Covington kids. Here you have a 16-year-old or whatever he was, boy, 15, grinning or smirking, typically out of confusion and fear, if you ask me, not out of hatred.
I think he was uncomfortable and didn't know what he was supposed to do, so he just smiled.
So he's smiling, but it's not that he's just smiling. He's smiling in front of an Aboriginal, a native, an Indian, whatever you want to call him. That's the transgression. If it was another white fella, beaten on a bongo drum, no news. White young boy smirks in front of an Aboriginal. Okay, hitting his ceremonial drum, big difference. And everybody looked at that Covington thing and going, no, this, you've gone too far. You've gone too far. We looked at the footage. The native guy, he was the aggressor. And the kid was just afraid, confused, and didn't know what to do, like a deer caught in headlights.
I don't think he was really afraid. I think he was a bit confused and not sure what to do, but he stood his ground, which I will always applaud him for. He basically said, well, what did you want me to do? He didn't take any action, but he didn't cede ground, as that news reporter said, don't you think just standing there, isn't that an act of aggression?
Well, maybe I'm mistaken by actually trying to ascribe to the kid some of the things that I may think of what he's doing and why he's doing it, just like the media were ascribing motives to his actions or to his smile. I tread dangerous ground if I'm going to say that this is why he was smiling. I don't know, only he does. But the reaction is what I'm more concerned about. Just like with the Don Cherry thing, I actually go, yeah, this is pretty good because now people are going to see just how loony these cuckaloos really are.
I think we should keep that as a go-to for calling the left. They're just cuckaloos. They are. It's just disgusting. And I hope this Don Cherry thing, if nothing else, will reach a lot more Canadians to show how cuckaloo the left actually is. And maybe in future not be so quick to judge stories based on the way they're portrayed in the media when we already see that the reality of it isn't what is being sold to us as a public. And maybe slowly the culture will change from being a cancel culture to one that, verify first and then believe, not take it at face value. But we can only hope. So till then, cuckaloo.
If you've enjoyed this presentation, visit justrightmedia.org for more programming that's not right-wing, it's just right.